Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Nashville as we get ready for race number 28 of the season for the FTF Grand National Series presented by Splash and Go Graphics. It's playoff race number 2 as last week at Las Vegas we saw Michael Frisch punch his ticket into the next round. Question is, who will it be tonight, or will it even be one of our playoff contenders that takes the checkered flag? We'll find out after 150 laps of racing here tonight at this short track. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Samuel Dyer. And Sam, the last time that we broadcasted a race here at a short track, it was all the way back at Lucas Oil Raceway Park. We saw some green flag racing. We saw some cautions. What do we see here now, knowing that there are potential playoff spots in the next round on the line?
Playoff spots are on the next line. Also, Nashville Fairgrounds, a course that's pretty newly scanned for these drivers. So it's going to be interesting to see if the drivers have practiced enough to get used to this course or not. But honestly, I'm expecting to see some of our front runners be up here and dominating this race. Roper, though, getting the pole here in the 83 machine, and Alt in the 40 on the outside. I mean, those are some drivers that have been getting poles at a lot of these courses recently, but still, watch out for Derek Justice as well as Brian Mccurry. I don't know why. I just have a sense this 41 machine, this could be his day to get a win.
Of course, you can't count out Kane Cook or Blake Reynolds in these races either, as we're looking at Michael Frisch. Looking here through the starting lineup, Frisch going to be starting mid-pack, of course, worry-free here this week as well as next week, knowing he will be advancing into the next round of the playoffs. But it's Daniel Roper, a non-playoff contender, that's going to be leading us to the green.
Yeah, Roper qualified and did well last week, as well as Brad Wright got the pole last week in our top 5, starting in 3rd. So a lot of drivers that aren't playoff contenders up front and could be spoilers here today, as we are green here at Nashville.
Green flag in the air, 150 laps to the checkers as top 3 get single file. It's now side by side for 4th. That's Derek Justice and Jonathan Oates.
And now this is only a 0.6 mile course, so it's a short track. There's a lot of banking through the corners. The straightaways are pretty long, so it gives you a chance to get under another driver, but you gotta try to utilize the banking to your best ability. What it's looking like right now, it's that middle groove that you really want to be in. You don't want to be too low, or you could be getting loose. Don't want to be too high, or you'll be scrumming off too much speed.
By side again for that 3rd position now, as it's Justice and Brad Wright, and right behind them you've got Briar LaPrade, a couple car lengths back behind him. You got Ryan Ducette. These are some guys that we're used to seeing do short track racing in the modified, so no surprise to see them racing here tonight in the stock cars under the lights at Nashville.
Yeah, not at all. Briar LaPrade, someone that is usually up front and does well even at road courses. So this 19 machine, good at short tracks, and really is going to carry that forward here today.
Brian Mccurry in the 41. You mentioned about him being someone to watch out for. Great run last week at Las Vegas. Subsequently comes into this race 19 points ahead of the cut line. Right now, that cut line driver is David Shieldhouse. He did not have the best of qualifying efforts. There he is in the 20 car, currently back in the 25th position. And bear in mind, that's 25th out of 32, since only 32 drivers run the short track races.
Yeah, a lot of these drivers are going to be trying to make some good push forwards. But really, this middle of the field is where all the action still side by side, and they continue to be, as this is all the battling going on for 9th on back.
Of playoff contenders in the middle of this side-by-side, the 99 of Michael Cozy Jr., as well as the 35 of Sean Butler. Of course, for Sean Butler, he's trying to come off a dismal run last week at Las Vegas, was up in the top 10 for most of the race, but got caught up in a hard impact wreck and finished outside of the top 20. Comes into this race 26 points behind the cut line.
And they continue to be running side by side, and you just got to be careful, because looking back around 18th position, that you can get close, and that's where we're seeing Kane Cook and others. They kind of are, there's an accordion effect where if someone backs off in the middle of the corner, it closes everything else up coming to the entrance of the corner, which could bring out a caution.
Yeah, some near contact there momentarily between Kane Cook and Casey Nemitz as they were battling for the 17th position. Cook now going to make his way around Nemitz and clear for that spot. Now sets his sights on the 62 of Kyle Riley. Further up, they're still side-by-side racing. That's Sean Butler taking a peek to the inside of Evan Rice for 14th.
Yeah, a car that has dropped back and we're used to seeing do well at short tracks. That's Ryan Ducette, who has dropped all the way back to 13th place in that 75 machine, qualified 8th, already out of the top 10.
Talk about Sean Butler, a driver that struggled last week trying to move his way back up in the points. Another driver that didn't even take the green last week at Las Vegas was Dylan Alt right now in the second position. Dylan Alt was not in Las Vegas's starting grid. We found out due to the fact he was serving an iRacing suspension, so couldn't even get into the session to partake last week, so finds himself on a long road trying to work his way back into the next round.
Yeah, and it's such a huge error to have to miss out on a race and to have those types of issues, but these drivers are going to continue to try to fight back, and a great run right now for himself, running second for Alt.
Now we do have a couple of drivers that came into this race playoff contenders that are not in the field here tonight. For one of them, it may find them heading into next week's race at Charlotte in a must-win situation. That's the 00 of Jake Poulin. Poulin came into this race 16 points behind the cut line, was not in tonight's field. Another driver that could find himself near that cutoff line next week, Brandon Hawken, a two-time winner this season. He was only 11 points ahead of the cutoff line. Neither driver were in the field here this evening.
Yeah, and Hawken, looking for a win last week, was not able to get it done. And, way how last week just went, you didn't even think Michael Frisch was a driver that could get the win done, but was kind of gifted it to him after being in the right place at the right time, and cars around him going up in flames, really.
And let's remember, for Dylan Alt, he may be 35 points back, but if he takes the checkered flag here tonight, then that's completely erased. He would be locked into the next round, much like Michael Frisch was able to do last week at Vegas.
The only issue for this 40 machine, he's kind of surrounded by a lot of drivers that are trying to play spoiler. I mean, you got Daniel Roper, Briar LaPrade, both these drivers running first and third, running well. The next points driver is going to be Derek Justice, and then you got Brian Mccurry back there in fifth place in that 41 machine.
Let's not forget that Daniel Roper had to actually qualify his way into tonight's event, was outside of the top 20 in the point standings, as the top 25 at speedways that are locked in, but only the top 20 at the short tracks that are locked in. So, had to race his way into tonight's event, qualified on the pole, and looking to maybe completely sweep this entire race. He's led 17, now 18 laps so far, trying to see if he can lead this entire 150 lapper.
Yeah, but if we stay green, you always know pit road is a place that you can lose and gain a lot of time, and that's where we could possibly see Dylan Alt try to make the pass here. Early on in the first about 10 laps, it looked like Dylan Alt had the car to get by this 83 machine, just wasn't able to make it done just yet. Looking out throughout the board, some other big, literally losers at the moment, looking like Nemitz in the 03, all the way back in 23rd position after qualifying back up in 16th, so a huge loss for that 03, looking to try to rebound.
Yeah, you mentioned the fact we've seen a number of drivers racing side by side, but it almost seems like if you're kicked out of that inside or middle groove, there's no grip up in that third lane, and that's kind of where Casey Nemitz was forced to at one point when battling with Kane Cook. After that, everyone just started freight training him, and that's probably why he finds himself back here in this position. A
driver that qualified well and now is dropping back, that's going to be Jonathan Oates, and after just getting passed by Michael Cozy Jr. Cozy Jr. is the car that is on the move. This 99 machine qualified in 18th place and now is up in 7th place, moving up quick, and really is running just actually is the fastest driver out here in the field is this 99 car, who's trying to run down our leader. Only problem, he's about 4.5 seconds back from our leader.
Micah Cozy Jr. had a great run last week at Las Vegas, and he's a two-time winner this season. The problem is he hadn't accumulated enough playoff points to have him in a good stead when the playoff points were put together. Coming into this race, even though he had himself a top 10 run last week, he was only 3 points ahead of the cut line coming into tonight at Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so close and trying to have the best runs you can, and sometimes you can get by some drivers and sometimes you're just not able to. Kane Cook, once again, near a lot of action of drivers being side by side. And he's now got the 12 machine under him of Waterworth. And that 12 machine pushing the 82 up. And oh, gosh.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the two cars that are definitely on the move, you already talked about Michael Cozy Jr. Kane Cook has to be the other one because he has been able to work his way from around the 24th position now up to 11th. And at a short track of all places, it is not easy to cut your way through the field.
Yeah, both Michael Cozy Jr. and Kane Cook started 18th and 19th and have been slowly chipping their way forward. Kane Cook, one position away from getting himself into the top 10.
Up here again inside of the top 5, Derek Justice on the season. He and Blake Reynolds kept swapping back and forth, at least in the first half of this season in terms of wins. Came into this race 7 wins, and I don't know if it's that the competition has gotten better or if Derek Justice is all of a sudden hitting a bit of a cold streak, but just not quite the speed we're used to seeing out of that Baskin-Robbins Supra.
Yeah, he just seems just a little bit off compared to what he was at the start of the season. He's still running in the top 5, which shows that 31 machine still has a chance to win this championship if he's there. But I mean, you got Mccurry behind him right on this 31's tail. Dylan Alt, I think if he didn't have his issues last week, really a favorite so far to get to the next round after his performance right now. But I mean, look at the drivers that had to qualify their way in. I mean, Briar LaPrade, Roper, both these drivers having fantastic runs, and really drivers that you got to question if they were there every single week, would they be our favorites going into the next round in this championship playoffs?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, who knows what would have been the case if things had been a little bit different at Las Vegas in terms of, as you said, people showing up and everything. We got a battle for second here that's actually going to finish up before it even gets into turn 3. Briar LaPrade will take the spot from Dylan Alt. Another thing we haven't touched on here that's very typical of the short tracks, race leader Daniel Roper is about to start catching drivers at the tail end of the field, and one of the names that is jumping out at me is the 67 of Andrew Schwartz. The reason for that is we're used to seeing Andrew Schwartz kind of hang out towards the back early on in a race and then work his way to the front late. At a short track, though, that's a little bit of a dangerous strategy because he cannot find himself a lap down, especially since he is 9th of the 12 playoff drivers, 3 points behind the cut line.
Yeah, and Andrew Schwartz right now is ahead of our leaders by about 5 seconds and is in a very nerve-wracking spot where he is right now, being 29th. He actually qualified in 24th, so has lost 5 positions since the green. And he doesn't look like he's running very comfortably compared to our leaders' times, though. He's running just as fast as them. It's just he's stuck here back in the back of the pack, and there's so many cars in front of him that he has to get by.
Boy, they're really racing it up now from second place back to around the 5th position. LaPrade, Alt, Justice, and Mercurio all were nose to tail through that last corner. Now again, you've got them nose to tail with our 2nd through 5th.
What's wild is they're nose to tail, but they're still running about a 10th faster than our leader Roper, and this 83 machine seems like he is stuck on staying in that middle groove while the rest of the group is figuring out, hey, maybe this inside line actually is the better place to be.
And the bottom, that last time around, they were all right down there on the yellow line trying to do it again. Now they all fan out up around the top of the racetrack.
Roper's off.
Yeah, there's a problem for the 83.
Pulling it into the pit road and almost dumps it into the pit wall barrier, teleports himself, and that is not the way this 83 machine wanted his day to go after leading our first 35 laps. Daniel Roper, this race might be done for the 83.
Gotta wonder if maybe he was wearing down those tires trying to gap the rest of the field while the rest of the field were in tire conservation mode, waited for the long run to reel him in, but due to teleporting, to your point, going to be a long time spent on pit lane, and at a short track, it's not going to just be one lap. You're going to lose multiple laps under green flag conditions.
Yeah, multiple laps are probably going to be lost here, but looking throughout the field and where some action's being made, I mean, you've got some cars that are side by side behind Shield House right now. I mean, there's just so many cars trying to make moves all over the place in the front of the field behind them. But our leader now is going to be Briar LaPrade in that 19 machine, who's caught up to lap traffic, and oh my goodness.
That was Andy Margot in the 48 that they're all trying to get around, and that's going to create a battle for second. Derek Justice going to get to the outside of Dylan Alt going into turn 3. See if he can get the power down there off of turn 4 as they remain side by side, and Brian Mccurry waiting to see which line's going to move.
I mean, you got to know, I mean, these guys are all trying to figure out how to get by these lap cars, and it's only going to get worse. See, they're only catching up to the drivers that are by themselves, but once they start catching up to drivers that are up in 28th, 27th position, you've got battles all over the place, and it is going to be treacherous for our leaders to get by them.
Watching the hands here of Dylan Alt, in-car cam in that 40 machine. Hands look very steady going through the corners, but I'm watching these cars going through these turns, and you can just see the cars bouncing up and down. Undoubtedly, they're feeling the chattering there going through these corners and having to deal with these bumps. And a lot of times at these short tracks as well, that can play into how much brake and how much throttle you use, because it will affect whether the car is going to turn or not.
Oh, completely. I mean, these drivers need to figure out that balance to make sure they can get in and get around as quick as possible. And also, you're starting to see drivers searching for where the speed is, and they're still staying a lane above on entry. On exit, though, you're seeing them exit on the lower end. So they're starting to figure out where the best apex point is for our leaders as they're catching more and more lap cars. As we're starting to see our front four still pretty close to one another. Then you go back to 6th place. That's where Michael Cozy is. He's about a second away from 5th place. And then Kane Cook is about almost 2.5 seconds back from Michael Cozy Jr. And then behind Kane Cook, it's just a mosh posh of a whole bunch of machines still all on top of one another.
Minter in that 10 machine putting some pretty good pressure on Kane Cook for the 7th spot, and as you mentioned, they're just all lined up as a train here from 9th place on back. A car that's in this mix that I was kind of feeling a little bit concerned about, because he was running back around the 16th position and not making much progress, was the 3 of Blake Reynolds, but he has now worked his way up into the 11th position, and this is a guy who, much like Derek Justice, accumulated so many playoff points during the course of the regular season. If he can just at least leave Nashville with a decent run here tonight, more than likely he can point his way into the next round regardless of next week's race at Charlotte.
Yeah, just needs to make sure he finishes up in the top 10, maybe even the top 5, just to completely secure himself. But a solid day for himself completely. I mean, also looking at Tucker Minter, another machine that's qualified outside of the top 20, now up to 8th place. I mean, that 10 machine looking well, and now on the back bumper of the 55 of Kane Cook.
Of course, all this speed that we're seeing here on the long run is down to the tire saving they did in the early portion of the run. Obviously, at any short track we go to, it's going to be all about tires, but one thing that these drivers don't necessarily have to be overly concerned about is fuel. They will have to pit before this race is over. You mentioned before we came on here that more than likely it's going to be just one time they'd have to come pit road for fuel, but when do you do it? Do you maybe try and split this 150 lap race in half, or do you run it till it's completely run out, just in case you get trapped on a lap down with a caution coming out?
I mean, if this was a slightly bigger track, I would think maybe pitting early is not a bad strat to short pit and gain time. But with it being so close where everyone is at, the potential of a caution at any moment, I think a lot of our front 5, maybe even our front 10, are going to be staying out as long as possible just in case a late caution comes out during our green flag pit stops.
Casey Nemitz in the 03 saw had been put a lap down. That stacked everybody up from 3rd place on back and allowed a pass for 3rd place. Dylan Alt getting around Brian Mccurry. Brad Wright there in the 80 machine also trying to see if he can get up here, some good battling inside the top 5.
You brought up the topic of Andrew Schwartz. He needs to start making his moves forward, and he's done that ever since you have notified or said it over the broadcast. Maybe he has the broadcast on his screen somewhere, because this 67 machine, ever since you said he needs to start moving, he was back in 29th position, now up to 25th, and has a long stream of cars to try to pass here, about a second ahead of him.
Next car that Briar LaPrade's going to catch is going to be the 53 of Justin Malello. And, there's a bunch of drivers that are not battling for the championship, but they're just trying to finish out the season as best they can in the points. You got Malello here, who's been pretty consistent this year. He's 18th in points, trying to see if he can finish this race on the lead lap. But much like we saw earlier with Daniel Roper, I'm seeing a lot of drivers that just don't seem to be able to hold the bottom anymore.
Yeah, that inside line, I mean, if you put too much wheel into it, you're burning up your front right tire and pretty much your whole entire right side to a point. So everyone's still trying to save their tires, but push as hard as they can. And based on cars that have been saving and pushing, we've got ourselves Derek Justice that's still running very good lap times as they're trying to get by lap machines right now. He's in second, trying to run down Briar LaPrade, who LaPrade has over a 3/4 of a second advantage over the 31 machine. But Blake Reynolds, he's now in the top 10. That 3 machine running just as fast and sometimes over a 10th faster than our leaders. He's just over 6.5 seconds back from our leaders at the moment.
It's really interesting because you mentioned Blake Reynolds. Well, if you go back to the first 2 short tracks that they ran this season, the first one was race number 7 at South Boston. The second one was race number, I believe, 13 at Irwindale. Blake Reynolds was the winner of them both.
And as we're trying to look and see, Michael Cozy Jr. up to 6th place now, and on the back bumper, Mccurry. This is a battle for 5th place that's going on. As they're battling along here, Schwartz is caught up to this group of machines that are all battling for 19th place, and led by the 12 of Gary Watersworth. And this is a large pack of machines that our leaders are going to catch here probably in the next 30 laps, around the time that we're going to be seeing our first round of pit stops.
Evan Rice, Cosmin Shinoshu, Tristan Hagenstein, Arnold Columbia, all in this group as well. You mentioned it, about 7-8 drivers, all under a blanket, about 4/10 separation, separating those 8 drivers.
And then you move up in front of them, then you get another.
Cosmin Shinoshu, little sideways there out of turn 4.
Able to save it there. Oh my god, 4 machine got all out of shape. And you got Andrew Schwartz at the end of this pack trying to figure out, how do I make my move forward? But as you see there, he's not safe. I mean, Andrew Schwartz is in a very difficult situation, but he's been doing this all season long.
Obviously, at the short tracks, you're going to use every bit of your race car to be able to pick up positions. If we're looking at this 84 of Cosmin, a lot of damage there on the front end of his machine. I've seen a lot of drivers, a lot of sparks flying there on these straightaways with drivers brushing the wall. Obviously, I know that these are pretty stable race cars. They're pretty durable. They can take some pretty good shots. And short tracks aren't necessarily as much about speed as they are about the technicality of approaching these corners. So these hits that we're seeing these drivers take to the outside wall, does it in any way affect them or no?
I mean, they're affecting them slightly. So if you're just pancaking the wall, which is when you hit the wall parallel with your car as well with the wall, then it shouldn't be doing too much damage to yourself and shouldn't affect you too much at a short track. It's when you get front end damage and hurt your engine where you're at the most, and you could be hurting your car the worst. As I'm watching some of these battles that are going on in the middle of the field. The 37 machine of Wilson Walsh in that 37 car, and making the Lightning McQueen scheme proud, getting by the 70 car.
Now on the back bumper of Travis Brown, the battle for 16th place. We saw just moments ago David Shieldhouse trying to get around Tyler Gary. That was for 14th. Shieldhouse is doing exactly what he needs to do here tonight. I mean, it's not easy coming into a playoff race as that cutoff line driver, because not only is everybody gunning for you, but you've also got to set a standard for yourself so you don't head into an elimination race either still the cut line driver or below the cut line. Right now, running in 15th, he's got some other drivers that are trying to battle him for spots that are around him, which means they're not really gaining that much on him. And the fact that Brandon Hawken is not in the field tonight, Shieldhouse could very easily pass the 89 in points, putting Hawken either down or below that cutoff line and giving himself a little bit of a cushion heading into Charlotte next week.
Yeah, which would be massive to see. The battle for 5th place, also a hotbed to see, as well as for 7th. As for 5th place, you've got Mccurry and Cozy Jr. right on top of one another, and then back for 7th place, you've got Minter and Blake Reynolds Reynolds looks like he's about to make the pass here on the 10 machine as they are right on top of one another.
And intermingled in all of these battles are lap machines, so you got to keep an eye on who is on the lead lap and who is not, courtesy of the ticker. Another driver that's back here, Michael Frisch in that 58. I mean, we haven't seen him be overly aggressive, but I also have to throw out another statistic for him because another short track we were on at earlier on this season, Lucas Oil Raceway Park, that's where Michael Frisch picked up his first win of the season.
Yeah, I mean, these drivers right now, they're trying to set each other up, and just looking at where drivers are sitting right now, our top two have stayed around the same all race long, even with lap cars. Briar LaPrade still with a half-second gap over Dylan Oates, and Oates just lingering there, not really letting the 19 car go and hitting the lap cars at almost the same exact time. So neither one of them losing time at the moment, but you know that we're getting closer to pit road and when these drivers need to pit for their one pit stop here today. And with drivers getting inching closer and closer, I don't want to jinx it, but Seth, I gotta say it, we still haven't seen our first caution of the day.
We definitely haven't. And another thing too, if that pit stop is made under green, let's go all the way back to the incident with Daniel Roper. Was leading the early portion of this race, brought the car to pit road and nearly wrecked it while doing so. This is a rather treacherous pit road these drivers are going to have to get onto, and if they have to do it under green flag conditions, it could be the main difference maker tonight into who's going to victory lane and who isn't.
Yeah, this pit road giving me a lot of feels of a Dover type of pit stop where the pit road is really deceiving that you could slow down, just get in there, but you have to really whoa up if you want to get into pit road cleanly here.
The driver that you were talking about that was kind of fading back but now seems to be charging back to the front just a little bit is Ryan Ducette in 75. He had dropped back as far as I think 16th or 17th place. He's been able to work his way just outside of the top 10 now into the 11th position.
Yeah, Ducette's been he's been having a pretty tricky time as he was up there with Frisch and Minter. Minter has really dropped off though. He was up there in around fifth and fourth position, and he has really dropped off now down to 9th place. The potential of being almost outside of the top 10. So Tucker Minter looking for this 10 machine to figure out how to stay in the top 10 as Ryan Ducette on his back bumper, and it looks like we're starting to see our first couple of drivers coming into the pits.
This could very well be the money stop of the race, provided we don't see a caution. A lot of these drivers running the risk that this thing is going to go green to the end, because if a caution does come out, they're going to get trapped probably 2 laps, if not maybe 3 laps. It doesn't take very long, about 20 and a half seconds for these drivers to get around and complete a lap here. So they're going to lose multiple laps here, and if a caution comes out, that could effectively take them out of this race. They'd have to rely on a lot of waiver rounds to probably get back into competition.
Yeah, the first car in is going to be Keith Sherman in the 15 machine. He was running up and around, I believe, the 19th position, around where Andrew Schwartz is now. And it started to come in. We're starting to hear over the radio that more drivers are starting to come into pit road. So you've got to make sure that you have space around you to have that time to slow down and get out of the way of the drivers that are still running as quick as they can.
Noticed here that since we went green, drivers were running anywhere in the high 18s to low 19s. They're now running in the 20.7 bracket, so that shows you the amount of tire fall off. And that's the thing here, the longer these drivers go before they elect to come down pit road, I mean, obviously they're struggling with the handling of their race cars, not having nearly the grip, not nearly the speed that they had earlier on in this race. And so it's kind of the choosing the lesser of two evils. Do you stay out there with a car that could be wrecking every corner, or do you come to pit road and effectively maybe throw this potential good finish, or in the case of a lot of our front runners, a win away? Yeah,
looking at drivers that are coming into the pits, you've got Casey Nemitz into the pits, and we also had Will Norton come in, and Will Norton in the 25 machine being our first DNF of the evening officially, as well as the 026 of Tyler Gary is going to be also being our second DNF of today's race, right after getting by the halfway marker.
Dylan Alt, race leader now after inheriting the race lead here from Briar LaPrade. And now trying to go to work on the 84 of Kazuma Nishinoshu.
Brad looks like he has really overused his stuff. He is losing time greatly. Brad right on his back bumper, waiting for the right time to make the pass here is the 80 machine, and it could be here in the next 2 laps, possibly, if we can get to these lap cars. As right now, officially, we have ourselves a total of 22 drivers still on the lead lap, but Dylan Alt right there, ready to get by the 82 of Kazuma Nishinoshu.
Really funny, you know, when you look at different drivers, the way that they're able to approach different racetracks. Because if we go back to last week at Las Vegas, you mentioned it earlier, Brad Sweet was up there towards the front, but it really seemed like as the run went on the longer run, he would fall off. He's not had that happen here tonight at a short track. He's been inside the top 5 pretty much all night long. So it's amazing that, you know, while one driver seems to struggle on the long run at one type of configuration of track, doesn't exactly transfer over to another one.
Yeah, no, it doesn't always do that. And, you know, with a lot of these drivers, they're going to be trying to gain as much as they can. And what's crazy is that Wright, I mean, in that 80 machine, he's just been cruising along and has been hitting his marks. And he might be running sometimes a little bit faster, maybe the same exact time. It's really, at this point, it's if you hit a lap car or not based on what your lap time's going to be. But Brad Wright qualified 3rd, still running 3rd. So this 80 machine doing exactly what he needs to do. Stay where he is, have a great run.
Saw just moments ago Gary Waterworth in the 12 getting put a lap down by Dylan Alt. If we look a little bit further up ahead of that portion of the track, here is Andrew Schwartz nearly losing it there to the inside of Travis Brown. He's only about 4 cars ahead of Dylan Alt. You can see the 40 there in the background.
Hey, what's crazy is that Andrew Schwartz has been doing this since we've been seeing cars being lapped down. He's been staying about 3 or 4 cars ahead of our leader, and right now it's the first time that we've seen really Schwartz in a panic mode of I need to get by Brown now because the leader is right there.
Going to be a wall between himself and Dylan Alt. That's Tristan Hagenstein and Alan Balancino. They're going to battle for the 18th position. Evan Rice right behind here as well. So now the 40 of Dylan Alt is thinking, where in the world can I go? Because he's obviously not going to try and take them 3 wide. And as he's having to deal with these drivers, Brad Wright has gotten his way around Briar LaPrade for 2nd.
It's wild to see that these drivers are starting to hit their marks now. The one thing that Alt has over Wright is that he has pulled himself out to over a 2-second lead over the rest of the field. So far, I will say we've only had a total of 4 cars come to the pits. 2 of them have DNF. 2 of them are still out there on track, running back in 26th and in 29th. That's Sherman as well as Ed Nemitz.
Pretty sure that none of them were drivers that were up inside of the top 15 when they came to
they
pit
were
road
not.
either. So
no, they were back. They were back in around 18th or further back.
So pretty much our race leaders are still out there trying to stretch it as far as they possibly can. We've reached past the halfway point, so nobody, at least here at the front, decided to split this race completely in half. The question is just how far can they go? I doubt anybody can go the full 150 laps, but I mean, can they stretch it past the lap 100 mark? They're moments away from finding out.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that they can make it to the past the 100 marker. The question is, can they make it to the 120 marker? Usually that's how far these drivers can go, about lap 125 at Bristol. And I believe cutting it down, they should be going to about 105 to 110 is the window that these drivers are looking for. We were saying the halfway marker would be a good spot to come in for the drivers that are about 15th on back, because then you can get better tires, get back out there, but the risk of going a lap down more than you are right now just is way too high for these drivers.
Over 2 seconds and multiple lap machines right now between race leader Dylan Alt and second place running Brad Wright. Want to take this opportunity, folks, to let you know that Flatout Racing Network is partnering with the National Breast Cancer Foundation by holding a fundraiser during the entire month of October. Of course, October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. If you'd like to contribute, please check out the link in the broadcast description to support a great cause and help provide care and support for women facing breast cancer at every step. Anything that you can contribute is greatly appreciated, as we are glad to be a part of fighting for a great cause.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a great cause when October comes around. Everyone wearing their pink, showing off their awareness and their support. Also donating. You can donate during this month, and this is probably the most popular month to donate for breast cancer awareness. But you can donate throughout the whole entire year for all these foundations to help scientists find a way to help and completely stop cancer, as it is a terrible, terrible thing to be out there.
Closing in on 50 laps to go, and I'm trying to do some calculations in my head, and right now, based off of the situation there was for all of our 12 playoff contenders coming into this race, if you've got Dylan Alt out in front, you've got Shieldhouse running right now. We see him trying to catch up to Sean Butler for the 13th position, and we know that Brandon Hawken is not in the field. Think based off my rough calculations, the drivers that would be heading into Charlotte next week below the cut line, and this is if the 40 car does go to victory lane, would be Brandon Hawken, Andrew Schwartz, Jake Poulin, and Sean Butler. I think right now Shieldhouse is just barely running ahead of Andrew Schwartz to be able to have that 8th playoff spot going into the elimination race next week.
And it looks like we're going to have another driver coming in. That's going to be the 7 machine coming in. A driver that I'm watching that is making some really good headway and making some big moves. Michael Frisch is coming out of nowhere, and he's running just as fast as our leaders.
Yeah, and as we said, he's got that win at Las Vegas last week to lock him into the next round. He's the guy that could come out here and try something different. He can run a different strategy. He can run different tire conservation and aggressiveness. I mean, this is something that Michael Frisch is able to do with no consequences because he knows that a spot in the round of 8 is in his future. And Briar LaPrade is going to come to pit road in the 19. Let's see if he makes it on safely, and it looks like he will. The LaPrade is going to be one of the first leaders to hit pit road. Looks like Tucker Minter in the 10 is also on pit lane, so right around lap 100 is when these race leaders are deciding now is the time to come to pit road, and barring a caution, this is what we would dub the money stop for all of these race leaders. Brad Wright still about 3 seconds back, and so for Dylan Alt, I mean, he has such a huge lead over the rest of the field. He has to be picture perfect getting onto pit road, and I have to wonder, we didn't get much of an opportunity to be able to observe practice. We were trying to quickly swap over from one broadcast to the other, but I wonder how many of these drivers really took the opportunity to be able to practice making a green flag pit stop here.
I mean, you would think that is probably one of the most important things to really look at. Yes, this is a new scan of a new racetrack for these racers, so they got to know the track, and they got to know the pit road is going to be insane for them to be watching out for. I
believe that the difference of lap times running now to what they were running before is pretty much about 2 seconds, maybe a little under 2 seconds. We saw Briar LaPrade come to pit road now. The big question is, how much traffic is he going to be around, and is he going to be able to lay down lap times quick enough that when the pit stops completely cycle around, he would find himself back out in front. I think when he came to pit road, he was running at the time in the 5th position.
I mean, he's going to be gaining a lot of time just by being out here. And yes, even if there's traffic in front of him, he's going to be just running so much faster than the rest of the field. He might be able to be one of those cars that tries to go 3 wide through these corners, even though we haven't been seeing it that much.
The 12 of Gary Waterworth coming to pit road. He was already a lap down. That 19 of Briar LaPrade, as well as Tucker Minter, they are a lap down. So the last thing they want to see is a caution, as neither one would be in the free pass position. And now, here it is. We've been seeing it brewing for the last 25 to 50 laps. Andrew Schwartz is the next driver on the hit list for Dylan Alt.
And Schwartz, who's been trying so hard to stay in front of our leader, I mean, he's done a great job of being up front and setting himself up to be where he's at. And you talked about it at the top of the broadcast. He's one of those drivers that starts in the back, works his way forward, and seems to always have a top finish. As coming into the pits now is Ryan Ducette, who's coming in that 75 machine.
To touch a little bit more there on Andrew Schwartz as well. If he falls a lap down, then yes, obviously that's not something he wants to have happen. But let's remember who he is racing. Right now, in order to advance into the round of 8, the driver he has to be focused on is that 20 of David Shieldhouse. Those two were separated by 3 points coming into this race. Shieldhouse in 8th and Schwartz in 9th. If Andrew Schwartz is able to best David Shieldhouse here tonight and best him next week, more than likely, despite the fact he may not even have a top 10 finish here in this first round, he could be pointing his way into the round of 8.
Michael Cozy Jr. coming in the 99 machine as another one of our front runners in the pits. We'll see where he comes out. And if anything, can he possibly run down LaPrade? Most likely not, as LaPrade is already up to 13th place and trying to catch up to where Andrew Schwartz is.
Yeah, Brian LaPrade is laying down some really good lap times right now. Race leader is running 20.7s, and he's only having to deal with maybe one race car each lap. Brian LaPrade's having to deal with 2, 3, 4 race cars during the course of a lap, and he's running 2/10 quicker.
And man, it is wild to see, but can Dylan Oates, he's now getting by Schwartz. He's got a little bit of time with some space to try to run some clean laps before he gets to the next cluster of lap cars. But it's more of a question of, with everyone being on such different tires and some drivers being so much quicker, there's always the possibility of someone catching another driver at the worst possible situation, and both drivers looking for the same real estate and contact being made.
We were 3 wide here at Nashville. That was Tucker Minter, who took Evan Rice and Derek Justice 3 wide and somehow was able to clear the both before they got to the corner. But that was a heart-stopping moment.
It's the fact that you have fresh tires. It gives you that opportunity to try to go 3 wide when you were not able to do it when everyone else was on the same tire strategy.
Like the 48 of Andy Margot is on pit lane here for his only pit stop of the night. And I say that just because these drivers would not have to pit anymore for fuel. They may, if we get a late race caution, some drivers may decide to come to pit road and take on some tires. Is looking there at the 35 of Sean Butler. Boy, tough break here tonight as well for him as he was slowly working his way up through the field. Was up, I think, around the 15th position, but staying out this long, coming to pit road this late, he's now fallen 2 laps down to 23rd, and Sean Butler could very well be one of those drivers that falls into the must-win category next week at Charlotte.
Yeah, and honestly, it's one of those things where you just got to have that consistency of being up front, but there's so many other drivers that have been running so well, taking it from their momentum from last week and carrying it forward into this week. It's just so hard sometimes to just stay within where you need to be.
John Poole III just got put a second lap down by Dylan Alt, and the gap continues to grow between Alt back to Brad Wright. What was about 4 seconds is now 6 seconds, and actually turning now into a battle for second place, because here comes Michael Frisch.
Michael Frisch is coming, and Michael Frisch slowly, methodically, has been saving his tires to make the move forward. Started 23rd, now up to 3rd place, and trying to figure out how to make this pass here for 2nd place.
You said on fresher tires, got to the inside of Brad Wright, who got a little fishtail there going.
Our leader's coming in. He just notified the field he's coming.
Eric Justice in the 31 is also pit. There's David Shieldhouse ahead of Dylan Alt. A number of our leaders are now in. 73 of Jonathan Oates is also on pit lane.
Now the question is, where will Brian LaPrade be coming out of the pits? The drivers are coming out with about 27 laps to go here to 28, so they can easily make it here. They just need a splash of fuel. How many tires do you take? Do you go 2 or do you go 4?
Reynolds, Michael Frisch, they are on pit road. Andrew Schwartz in the 67 now to the attention of his crew. Here comes Brian Mccurry, as well as the 80 of Brad Wright. And right now, Brian LaPrade looks like he's going to be cycling out to the lead, and he's up to second.
Frisch and Olt were inside of one another, not sure who was going to be given to who, and it was Olt that decided to take the lead from both those drivers as they come out, though, looking to see where they're at. Olt's out. Where is LaPrade at?
He's already up to 2nd place, and according to the telemetry, it looks like he's running about 17 seconds ahead of the 40 of Dylan Alt, who's right now in 7th place.
LaPrade is running about a second off of what his best time is, and he's been out there for 20 laps. How much can Olt gain here coming to the final couple of laps?
You're waiting on a couple more drivers to come to pit lane for their pit stop. Race leader Kane Cook is one of those. Looks like Osen Walsh is another. He may be planning on pitting here momentarily.
Frisch missed his pit stop. He has to come back in.
Yeah, it looked like he was coming back down pit road. A costly mistake here tonight, but not one that's going to be a thing that affects him in moving on to the next round. Very lucky he had that win last week at Vegas.
Yeah, that win last week is saving him massively here as LaPrade now up to the point, leading the way after getting by Kane Cook. Kane Cook in the 55 machine still has to come into the pits, as well as as Walsh, excuse me. So both those drivers running in the top 5, they need to come into the pits here.
It just shows how strong this 19 car is as well, because he took the lead from Kane Cook. Kane Cook didn't surrender it coming to pit road. LaPrade, with those fresh tires, has been able to fight his way up past Kane Cook to the race lead.
And these drivers are going to continue to be pushing forward and on, and it's crazy to see where we're at right now. And re-looking at our 83 machine, as you might be seeing some smoke in turn number 1. That is from Roper, and that is his engine blown for the 83. So I think he might have had some issues at the start that blew his engine.
Could very well have. As Sean Butler trying to get his lap back the hard way here, battling with Briar LaPrade, and as he is doing this, he's got some other drivers that are also wanting to get around the 19. You've got the 80 there of Brad Wright. You've got the 98 of Evan Rice. Now, Evan Rice is 2 laps down. He's trying to get to -1, and I think if you're Briar LaPrade, you just let these guys go.
Yeah, you kind of are in the situation where you let the drivers go that have fresher tires than you and continue to hold on to the lead that you have. That will be, once you see Kane Cook come in the lead, you're racing Minter, who is on the same tire strategies as you, and he's almost 4.5 seconds back.
We talked about Sean Butler, that he was down, I think, around 22nd, 2 laps down. After the pit stop cycled around, he now finds himself battling for the 10th position back on the lead lap. So maybe the situation not quite as dire going into Charlotte as we originally thought, but still, needing this good run here tonight to counter the hard luck of Las Vegas last week. And certainly it's not going to be a cakewalk next week at Charlotte still.
Yeah, it really isn't. I mean, next week, yes, you would hope that it's going to be an easy race, but I mean, Las Vegas showed that anyone could be having a great run and it be thrown out the window. And also, you can honestly win at any course. Based on how these drivers have been racing recently, all of our playoff drivers have been putting on a great show.
Minter has gotten by Kane Cook for 2nd. Ryan Ducette has now moved into 3rd. Cook is still out there in 4th position, about to fall into the clutches of Michael Cozy Jr. That would be for 4th place. It's so ironic, too, because, we talk about the fact there are drivers that race their way in to these events through the knockout qualifying session earlier on in the night. Their goal is to just go out there and win. Right now, your top 3 are drivers that had to qualify their way in, which means that very likely, heading into next week, the only driver still that we'll know is locked into the next round is Michael Frisch. Everybody else is probably going to have to point their way in.
Yeah, and right now, it looks like Mccurry able to unlap himself, which then leaves us with a total of 12 cars still on the lead lap. Briar LaPrade really in a very safe mode, has coming to less than 20 laps to go. This 19 machine just needs to hit his marks and hope a caution doesn't come out, because he's got a big enough lead that I believe he can hold off Ryan Ducette. But as I say that, he's on the much fresher tires, already has cut this lead down by about 0.3.
How many times have we said the words LaPrade and Ducette for the win at a short track? It kind of just seems like deja vu, but now it's here in the FTF Grand National Series. 3.5 seconds separate these two with less than 20 laps to go. The question is, does Ducette have enough time? He does have the fresher tires.
He does have the fresher tires, but they're starting to equal out at this point. He only had about 6 lap fresher tires than the 19 machine of LaPrade. So Ducette has to hit his marks here, run as quick as he can. The only issue that he really has right now is that he had lap cars to worry with. Now he's got a ton of fresh air to work with, and it's only his leader and himself that are between one another.
But look here, the 40 of Dylan Alt has been able to work his way from 5th now up to 3rd. He's only about 3.8 seconds behind Briar LaPrade. And there you go. Wow, that changes this entire aspect of the race.
Kyle Riley in the 62 machine looked like he was a part of this one, coming out of 2, entering turn number 3.
Kyle Riley was one of, I think,
there were cars before him that were extremely slow, excuse me.
There were 5 drivers that had yet to come to pit lane, including Kane Cook.
Waterworth and Columbia looked like they had their issues coming out of 2. and then looked like Riley had nowhere to go.
They were talking about Waterworth and Columbia. They were battling just inside of the top 20. Both of them one lap down. So see what happened here. Columbia was actually running ahead of Waterworth at the time. Columbia really high there in 1 and 2. Wow, just loses it off the corner. Evan Rice in the 98 gets a piece of it.
Yeah, just nowhere for anyone to go. I mean, that's the one thing about Nashville. It's a very narrow backstretch and front stretch. So if a car gets sideways and they're completely just blocking the road, they're practically blocking about 3/4, almost half the stretch just by being sideways.
People wondering, I mean, we haven't seen drivers have issues with spinning off the corner all night long. Well, these drivers haven't been running 136 laps on their tires all night long. Arnold Columbia, that's how old his tires were when he came off that second corner.
Yeah, and at that point, you're questioning why the 39 is still out there on those tires, but he was the only one still out there really on the tires that everyone else had already came in the pits to fix and get fresh ones. And with the damage being one lap down, 39 machine now just looking to salvage possibly here a top 20.
Tough break there for Kyle Riley. The thing for him was normally when a car spins off the corner at these short tracks, they go down to the inside wall, but that little last minute contact between Columbia and Evan Rice was actually what shot the 39 back up the track. So unfortunately for Kyle Riley, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I'll tell you what, this is setting us up for a very interesting restart because that 40 of Dylan Alt was closing up the gap in a hurry. I don't know if he had enough laps to be able to close the gap up and be on that 19's back bumper on the last lap, but it would have been close. Now it's a moot point. He's going to be restarting behind that 19 machine, and these two have been pretty much the strongest two cars of the night. They're going to get to settle it out with less than 10 to go.
Yeah, and we'll have to wait and see. Most likely, we're not going to see any of our front runners coming to the pits just because how important track position is, which gives Dylan Alt the advantage as he has over 10 laps better tires than the 75 of Ryan Ducette in front of him, and looks like about 19 fresher tires, 18 lap fresher tires than the 19 of Briar LaPrade. So Dylan Alt at the moment looking like the strongest car coming to the end here.
This is the closest that these drivers have run in proximity to each other since the initial drop of the green flag. It took us until lap 136 before we saw our first caution in the flagman's hands. You know, this is going to be a wild restart. We may not be done with cautions here because everybody is going to be all bunched up here with less than 10 to go. A win is on the line for some. A transfer spot into the round of 8 is on the spot for others.
Yeah, 9 laps to go with a total of 13 drivers on the lead lap. Last car on the lead lap, that's going to be Shieldhouse. We'll see where he lands, but Dylan Alt, the car to watch out for. Second car on the inside.
Briar LaPrade got himself a good jump. He's going to clear Ducette, who tries to tuck down in front of Alt for second place. Dylan Alt going to have none of it. He's going to battle for second with the 75.
Watch out for Kane Cook in the 55 machine. He's on the newest tires, going 3 wide. He's going to try to make that third lane work to get by everyone. Kane Cook might be your favorite to win this thing.
Wow, somehow able to find a way to the outside of the 80 of Brad Wright. Now trying it again to the outside of Blake Reynolds. Look at him make that outside line work. Larson lining tonight at Nashville.
He is on 6th lap, fresher tires, 6th lap old tires. The rest of the field is on about 20 to 40 lap old tires. He can't come to the wall.
Caution's going to wave. The track is completely blocked up as
No more contact being made.
Oh my goodness, Michael Cozy Jr., one of our playoff drivers.
Oh, Kane Cook was coming and got shoved up. It looked like pinched. Cozy came up trying to pinch the 10, and Kane was already there. 37 was involved in that. Oh.
It's 2 playoff drivers right there. 3 wide situation coming off of turn 4 that had detrimental results for several drivers that were running inside the top 10 and on the lead lap. And now leaves us with the question of how many laps we're going to have left here in this one.
Well, I wouldn't say that we're completely done with cars trying to go 3 wide here, because there's another car that has the freshest tires out here. Doesn't have to go 3 wide too often. That's the 37 of Walsh. He's on 9 lap fresher tires, was on the same strategy as Kane Cook, making moves as well, just not as bold as going 3 wide every single corner here on these last couple of laps.
Another driver that got a slight piece of that. Another playoff contender, the 31 of Derek Justice. Looked like Kane Cook may have come down and gotten him in the passenger side door. Also the 10 there, fast race car of Tucker Minter, a lot of damage on his helmet, Chevrolet Camaro. That's about 5-6 race cars all torn up, and 2 of them, most importantly, Michael Cozy Jr. and Kane Cook, playoff contenders. And why this is so important for both drivers is the fact that, we've still got, 28 drivers, make it 27 drivers, that are still running on the racetrack. That's still positions that could be lost for both those drivers. Michael Cozy Jr. came into this race only 3 points ahead of the cut line. Kane Cook was only 12 points ahead of the cut line. Both of those drivers could find themselves down near the cut line next week heading into Charlotte.
And Kane Cook has disconnected and is done for the race. And looking at other drivers that are still running on course, could be bringing himself all the way down to about 27th position possibly for that 55 machine that was looking like a chance to win this thing.
Kane Cook had a great run, a podium finish last week at Las Vegas. Tonight, we'll have a very poor finish at Nashville, and we'll have to see what the point situation is for the 55, his chance of advancing into the round of 8 next week at Charlotte. What will the scenario be? As lights are still on atop the pace car, which says to me that I think we're either getting a 1-lap shootout, maybe an overtime green-white checkered. We'll wait and see what the call is, but now it's LaPrade and Alt the front row, with Ducette and Justice in row 2, Blake, Reynolds, Brad Wright row 3, followed by Mccurry, Butler, Shieldhouse, and somehow that 10 car of Tucker Minter is still running and on the lead lap, followed by Michael Cozy Jr. and Andrew Schwartz. That is your top 12. Those are the drivers that are currently on the lead lap.
Well, Seth, it's a green-white checkered attempt that we have here for the FTF Grand National Series here at Nashville Fairgrounds Raceway. And I got to say, this is going to be a fun one to watch. Right now, Dylan Olt looks like the potential victor here with freshest tires up front. A driver I thought possibly was going to be staying out there for a chance, which was going to be Walsh. He'll be not going for the victor here, so he decided to go in the pits.
Green flag in the air. They've got to make it back around to the white as LaPrade's going to clear for the lead. He leaves Alt and Ducette to battle for second, but Alt's going to have that outside preferred line. He's going to be on the back bumper of LaPrade down the back straightaway.
And it's all about trying to defend LaPrade. He's got to stop this push the 40 machine's going to have, but man, is it going to be hard.
They didn't make it back. Caution is out. They did not get the white flag. We're going to rack them up and do it again, as it looks like that 37 car of Walsh might have been the reason for this one.
Really looking at where it possibly could have been. It sounded like it might have been the 82 machine and others involved.
Yeah, you're right. It was not Walsh. He was on pit road at the time. Let's go back and see if indeed it was the 82 of Tristan Hagenstein. Doesn't look like it was the 82 car. Trying to look and see who it was that brought this out. I'm not seeing anybody towards the middle of the pack out of shape. Oh, yep, 12 of Gary Watersworth, as well as the 39 of Arnold Columbia on the back straightaway. Looks like Waterworth made some contact with either Hagenstein or Brown. Maybe even Kazminish Inoshi, who was on the top side there. Nope, it's Hagenstein crowding the 12 up into Kazminish Inoshi, then bounces back down into the path of Arnold Columbia.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be hard for these green-white checkers, for these drivers, because you have all the drivers that are in your top 13 now that are on the green flag, that are on the lead lap. they're going to be staying on their older tires. Everyone else behind them, they've been coming into the pits, cycling, getting new tires. So periodically through here, you've got drivers that are running about 1 second to 2 seconds faster than the rest of the field. And that's where a lot of these contacts are coming from.
You saw just how close Dylan Alt was to being able to try and make a move there on Briar LaPrade. And just based on that restart alone, I think we could safely say that Dylan Alt, after missing last week at Las Vegas, he is treating tonight's race at Nashville as a must-win situation, even with Charlotte next week on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, you got to truly go out there, put your best foot forward for this victor here. And Dylan Alt, he's got to be frustrated in the fact that we keep on having these cautions because he needs to run some laps. But the more times that we stay out here, the more time that the tires are actually equaled out, and the advantage that he once had is kind of gone.
Well, with this caution coming out, we now have 12 cars that will, or make that 13 cars that will be on the lead lap. Evan Rice receiving the free pass. It looks like he has actually just come to pit road to top off the fuel tank there.
Also got tires for that 98 machines. We'll see in the back of the field if he can somehow find himself up front.
Next car that would be in line for the free pass, should we get one more caution, would be Tristan Hagenstein. But then after that, that would be it. We've had one overtime caution. This would be the second attempt. We've only got one more in the bank should we need it. And it's a couple of Supras up here on the front row yet again with LaPrade and Alt. Ducette in third. Fourth is Justice, followed by Reynolds and Mercurio. For Alt, Justice, Mercurio, Reynolds, Butler, Shieldhouse, Cozy Jr., and Schwartz. If they win, they're locked into the next round.
Our second attempt at the green-white checkered is on. Here comes Briar LaPrade trying to block as much as he can on Alt. And then behind them, they're side-by-side for third place.
Dylan Alt got through turn 2 really well. Good back straightaway speed on the back bump of the 19. If he's close enough, will he move him here? We're coming to the white flag. We have received it. We're racing to the checkers.
Use your bumper. It's not a playoff driver. This is someone that could be stealing your spot to the next round. You've got to make a move. Here he comes into the wall. Contact in the back. They're all scrambling. Contact as they're blocking up the track.
The entire back straightaway as a parking lot is off. Turn 4. Dylan Alt locks himself into the round of 8, winning tonight at Nashville.
Missed last week, but it doesn't matter. Punches his ticket this week at Nashville. We'll see you in the next round there, Dylan Alt.
Alt's only win this season that locked him into the playoffs was at the road course. Believe, if I remember correctly, it was at Road America. Yes, it was. And tonight at the short track of Nashville, he will join Michael Frisch in the round of 8. But we got to go back, look at that replay, because you're right. The entire track was completely blocked up. Nobody was going to lift because there were positions on the line and just looked like an entire crash zone there.
And Mccurry, Cozy, both drivers that have been running in their top 5, 6 position, finished back in 12th and 13th position after this caution. But it was contact off the exit of turn number 2 that started this all.
It was contact in that left rear quarter panel from Dylan Alt to Briar LaPrade. You see right there, LaPrade trying to save it, but the wall comes up on him. And just there's Mercurio down into the wall. There's Shieldhouse. There's Minter. Cozy facing the wrong way. I think that was Brown there. There's Sherman. There's Ishinoshu. They were pushing the 19 car through 3 and 4, and it's like LaPrade throws the car in reverse, and he's actually going to beat a couple of cars to the line to finish unofficially in the 11th position.
Yeah, I mean, if you cannot spin your car around quick enough, might as well just throw it in reverse and hope that you can pass some cars and finish ahead of them that way. And great move by the 19 there to make sure he wasn't last of the lead lap cars. But man, Dylan Alt, you knew he was going to use the bumper. I thought it was going to be on the entry, but on the exit, what a shocker of a move. But it makes sense with his fresher tires that he had over the 19 there.
And it's a move, to be honest, since he was there within striking distance, he had to make. You don't want to go into the Charlotte Roval next week. Yes, he's been good at the road courses, but you don't want to go into an elimination race in a must-win situation, which regardless of what the track is. And let's be honest, I mean, he and Briar LaPrade, they were really the 2 strongest cars of the night, so it was going to come down between either one of them.
Yeah, and honestly, any type of a move there, I'm not surprised to see. It was a playoff driver trying to punch his ticket to the next round, going up against a driver that, honestly, and you hate to say it, a driver that could have been stealing that spot from Dylan Holt by costing him that victor there. So, of course, you're going to see the aggressive plays by a playoff driver to a non-playoff driver.
Well, this is the way that they made their way back to the start finish line. And from about maybe first back through fifth were the drivers that cleanly made it through the incident. Everybody else scrambled for positions. But with the finishes of top 5 runs for Derek Justice and Blake Reynolds, I think we can now add them to the list of drivers that are also going to be moving on to the next round. I think they've accumulated enough playoff points that they would be advancing to the round of 8. So technically, 50% of our round of 8 has been put together. We're going to have to find out who the other 4 drivers are. Sean Butler, top 5 run after the struggles of Las Vegas last week, but is that good enough yet for him to be able to point his way in, or will he be in a must-win situation? And great run there for David Shieldhouse as well. We talked earlier about how difficult it is to be coming in as the cutoff line driver. He's going to finish with a top 10 run, maybe have himself a little bit of a cushion going into next week.
Yeah, I mean, Shieldhouse kind of was doing what we were seeing from Schwartz, which was for this time it was slightly different, where he was running in the middle, but was also just staying in front of the leader while we were seeing other cars go a lap down, able to save those tires for the later run and make the moves that counted the most.
You talk about Schwartz. We saw him fall a lap down earlier on, got the free pass at just the right time. He finished in the 9th position. This is classic Andrew Schwartz. I don't know how he manages to keep doing it week after week, but he manages to get the same exact Schwartz strategy done here at a short track. Rest of those other playoff contenders you already mentioned about Mccurry and Michael Cozy Jr., 12th and 13th. Now for Mccurry, not as bad of a situation for him. He was 19 points ahead of the cutoff line coming into this one, so he'll be in a pretty good situation. But for Michael Cozy Jr., the fact that he, David Shieldhouse, Andrew Schwartz were all down right around each other, separated by 6 points, it's going to make it really close for him going into next week on whether he's going to be just above or just below that cut line.
Yeah, and then when we go to really from to the next screen, you'll see where we get to see Kane Cook all the way back down in 27th position, not where that 55 wanted to be after a tremendous try to go for this victory here today.
There's the rest of your finishing results there. Will Norton and Daniel Roper, who led the first 20-25 laps of this race, finished out of the event in dead last. So from first to last, unfortunately, for our pole sitter. Let's see if we can get some words with some of our top 3 finishers. It's been a while since we've talked with Derek Justice, finishing 3rd place here tonight, and I thought we had him on standby, but apparently we don't. So let's see if we can get any of our top finishers. Looks like the only one we currently have right now is our race winner down in victory lane, Dylan Alt. So let's talk with him. Dylan, it's Sam and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yes, I do.
Well, man, the last time we talked to you, you took the checkered flag for your first win of the season at Road America, locking yourself here into the playoffs. But now you're locked into the round of 8. You know you're moving on to compete for the championship. I mean, just how hard was your heart pumping there on that final green-white checkered when it came down between you and the 19?
Yeah, we went on a long run, and that long run was actually a lot of fun. I didn't expect this race to actually be a clean race. I just kind of wasn't expecting to finish, I don't think, but I really had to give it all to actually try to make my way up to the cutoff for the playoffs. So the green white checkers that we had, I wasn't really new to the new tires because we went like 100 and something laps on it, and I just had to race Breyer. Like, me and Breyer have raced so many times together, and I thought I did a dirty move to him because I was trying to just lam the bumper, and I actually turned him on accident. And that's what I thought everyone else was saying, that I didn't do a dirty move, but that's what I think.
Well, you know, obviously we documented the problems that you had last week where you weren't able to make the field for Las Vegas, came into tonight in a huge points deficit below the cut line. You know, we saw you up there in the top 3 all night long. Your car was definitely fast. You had great track position, led the most laps here tonight as well. You got your win earlier on this season at a road course. We've got the Charlotte Roval coming up here next week, but did you approach tonight's race as a must-win situation?
Everyone was telling me that I had a must-win situation. I just wanted to kind of get a top 5, but it's Nashville. I thought I was probably going to get wrecked. It's a new track, so no one really knows that much about this track, and so I guess everyone was trying to just stay clean at the start of the race because it's a new track, and it actually worked out.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan, speaking of it being a new track, we saw some drivers almost clobber that wall coming into the pits. Was that ever an issue for you coming into the pits?
I was just being I don't even know the right word, but I was just trying to be patient, and I knew I had a pretty big lead, so I just wanted to have a perfect entry. It wasn't fast, but I actually got in, didn't get a penalty, and yeah.
You know, we see so many times when a driver that's in playoff competition gets an early win in a round, they then are able to kind of change up the way they approach the upcoming races for the remainder of that round. With the Charlotte Roval coming up next week, is there going to be a different approach to that road course than there would be if you were still heading into that race in a must-win situation?
I think I still have to gain as much points as possible to make sure that my spot is locked in. So, every road course race we've went to, I think I've gotten a decent finish, except for like Homestead or the ones I got wrecked out, like Watkins Glen. So I just hope that I don't get wrecked. I just want to finish up there.
Well, Dylan, obviously a tremendous run for you here tonight. You advance into the round of 8, your second win of the season here in the FTF Grand National Series. Tremendous effort here this evening. We already know now at least a good number of the drivers that are going to be moving on to compete for the championship, and you're going to be one of them. We're going to let you do some shout-outs.
Oh, I'd like to shout out SVG and everyone else in FTF. Thank you.
That's Dylan Alt. He's your winner here tonight at Nashville, advancing into the round of 8. Congrats again on a great run, and wish you luck next week at the Charlotte Roval. And we do have Derek Justice in here now, so let's talk to our third place finisher. Hey, Derek, it's Sam and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
I got you, man.
Well, my goodness, what a crazy race here tonight at Nashville, and we saw you in the middle of a lot of that mayhem there. Spent most of the night up there inside of the top 5, but we didn't really ever see you fight up there towards the front. What little bit more did you need to be able to have that 31 up there battling for the win?
Oh, this track is so difficult to stay consistent. You're slipping and sliding around a lot, and every time you slip and slide, you're just wearing out your tires. And Dylan all managed to keep the tires on it and not slide a whole lot. I mean, it was hard. Like, it was hard to keep consistent lap after lap, and had a bunch of guys coming through the field like Blake and Michael Frisch. They were coming through the field. They came out of nowhere, and it's just it was just tough to define on what line to run. Like, you didn't know if the second lane was faster or the bottom lane was faster, or did the bottom lane save tires at the top lane? You couldn't tell. So it was a mystery to all of us because it's a relatively new track. But other than that, walk away with the P3. I'll take it. So and we move on.
You know, Flatout Racing Network covered a lot of the first half of this regular season, and we saw the back and forth between yourself and Blake Reynolds. One go to victory lane, the other one go to victory lane. Both of you accumulating a lot of playoff points there. When we then watched what was going on during the second half of the regular season, we saw a lot of new drivers go to victory lane, and even here during the playoffs, we're seeing a lot of new drivers hopping up there towards the top of the leaderboard. Do you think that that's just because now with the playoffs going on, everybody's having to up their game, or is there some tracks here that maybe is causing some problems for you?
Maybe a road course if we're on a road course, but other than that, when it comes to ovals, I think I'm pretty comfortable where I'm at. It's just you just gotta keep grinding, keep digging. Like I said, this league, it just gets harder and harder with new people coming in. I'm like what I'm seeing with the future of this league. And just you just gotta wait until next year. It's gonna be even better, and it's not gonna be me and Blake accumulating a lot of wins. There's gonna be a bunch of different winners next year. I guarantee it.
Yeah, next year is going to be wild. But speaking of tonight, like you said, it's a new track. You were slipping and sliding. How was it trying to get by lap traffic, though, with it being such a new track and everyone really struggling at times?
getting the pedal down and not lose grip off the corner. I mean, the lap cars have every right to try to stay on a lead lap too, because it's a short track. It's hard to get back to the lead lap if you go lap down on a short track like this. So they had every right to stay on a lead lap. So it was hard. Like, it was respectful, and yeah, there was a lot of give and take in the beginning of the race, because people are trying to feel out, like, okay, what's going too fast? Am I saving tires or not? So it was a lot of give and take, first half of the race. But when second half, it was all take, which is expected. So yeah, it was a lot of fun out there. I hope you all had a good time broadcasting it. It was fun to drive.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. Battles all the way through the field, which we've actually been treated to quite a bit here with the short tracks here at FTF. We got the Charlotte Roval going up next week. With this top 3 run here tonight, I think you've accumulated enough points where you would actually now be locked into the next round. But how important is it for you going into the Roval next week to keep this momentum up heading into that round of 8?
Well, like I said, road courses are not my forte, so just not really just ride around, but try to still stay competitive. See what the playoff guys are how they feel, because you don't want the guys that have already advanced to boost more confidence. So you got to try to shut down that confidence a little bit by beating them before the next round starts. So yeah.
Well, Derek, a great run for you here tonight. A 3rd place performance. As stated, I'm pretty sure you've now moved yourself on to the round of 8. So we wish you luck with that. We wish you luck next week, of course, as well at the Charlotte Roval. But we're going to let you some shout outs now.
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you all for the broadcast. Shout out to the FTF. They put a great setup on this track today. It was a lot of fun. Obviously, shout out to my pro team, excuse me. North Sports Racing. We had 3 members advance, plus another new member in Brian Schillenberg from the Coke Series, which he will be in the Pro Series. But having 4 people in North Sports Racing in the Pro Series is going to be nice. Shout out to Baskerville, my Twitch viewers. My supportive community is really awesome, that they come in here and watch me race and learn, and me teaching them everything I know. And of course, shout out to everybody watching back home in YouTube land.
That's Derek Justice. He brings it home 3rd place here tonight at Nashville Short Track. Congrats on a great run, Derek. We look forward to talking to you next week. And so that is going to do it here tonight. And, you brought it up, Sam, the fact that, that this is a new track that they scanned. They put it here on the iRacing sim, pretty much untried for all these drivers, but you went 136 laps completely green flag with a 32 car field.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to see that everyone was trying to drive so cautiously so they didn't make a mistake. And I think everyone had it in their mind. Going to a short track, there's always the potential of it kind of being a wreck fest of every 5 to 10 laps someone spun out. But having such a long green flag run, it gave everyone that opportunity. And then that late caution, you just knew that it was going to breed more cautions because it was just too late to be giving up any room.
This week, Flatout Racing Network is going to have the coverage of the first elimination race of the playoffs at the Charlotte Roval. And, we even heard Derek Justice say he's not really all that big on the road courses. There are probably going to be some other drivers down there near that cut line that aren't all that particularly thrilled with road courses that, they might be pretty nervous heading into next week.
Yeah, I mean, we got to give credit, though, to Justice. Derek has been doing a great job since the start of the season to now. The way that he has evolved from road courses to really struggling just to get into the top 10 to now being a car that has a chance to be a top 5 finisher. So don't really sleep on that 31 machine. Still has a chance to get a good finish next week.
Those drivers that we expect will be down near that cut line driver, Kane Cook, Brandon Hawk, and Michael Cozy Jr., David Shieldhouse. We know they're good at the road courses, so it should be a pretty good one in next week's elimination race. But that's going to do it here tonight from our coverage at the Nashville Short Track. It's your winner tonight, Dylan Alt, advancing into the round of 8, joining Michael Frisch as well as Derek Justice and Blake Reynolds. So 50% of the field is set. Who's going to make up the other 4? We're going to have to wait and find out. Sam, as always, appreciate you joining me in the booth.
It's always a pleasure there, Seth.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you guys next Saturday night when we get to the Charlotte Roval to find out who is moving on from the round of 12 to the round of 8. But for Samuel Dyer, I'm Seth Cole. Have a great rest of your night here as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.